Welcome to our Think Big Series brought to you by PSG. My name is Bonsa Ramoncha and I'm the marketing manager for PSG Well. PSG is a leading financial services group with an extensive national footprint in South Africa and a presence in Namibia. Our firm has been in operation since 1998, and we pride ourselves on providing a bigger picture approach to our clients' financial needs, from asset and wealth management to short-term insurance. We offer clients access to a wide range of insurance and investment products based on comprehensive advice. Our clients benefit from access to proprietary products and solutions, as well as a comprehensive list of third-party products. The Think Big series is a collection of dialogues with leading speakers hosted by award-winning financial journalist Bruce Whitfield. We aim to bring our audiences independent insights that will help them formulate their own opinions on some of our country's most pressing issues. As uncertainty and challenges continue to abound, we believe being armed with knowledge will better equip us all to chart the way forward. In today's webinar, Bruce talks to Dr. Imitiaz Sooliman. Age 30, a spiritual leader in Istanbul called on Dr. Sooliman to serve all people, irrespective of race, religion, color, class, political affiliations, or geographical location. Answering this call, Dr. Sooliman, who qualified as a medical doctor in 1984, started running this humanitarian organization from the spare room of his Pietermaritzburg home. Since then, Dr. Sooliman, as the founder and chairman of Gift of the Givers, has steered the organization to many notable achievements and world firsts. Gift of the Givers Foundation has emerged as one of the most respected humanitarian organizations in the world and is today the largest disaster response agency of African origin anywhere on the continent. The topic of today's webinar is titled, Future of Social Support and Upliftment. The past year has certainly brought unique humanitarian challenges, and along with that, many learnings. Whether it is persistent inequality plaguing our communities, the global pandemic, or the more recent devastation caused by the Cape Town fires, our world is never short of a worthy cause. Let us hear from Dr. Sooliman on how the largest disaster response non-governmental organization is responding to all these critical challenges. Remember to contribute to our social media campaign, use the hashtag ThinkBigPSG. This series is free, shareable, and open to anyone who is interested, whether you're a PSG client or not. I'd now like to hand over to Bruce.
Well, so thank you very much indeed. Imitiaz Sooliman, welcome. Good to have you with us. 1992 it all starts, and a bit like Apple and Google and Facebook and other global startups, you start off as a home industry, as a home business. And roughly the same sort of time. What was happening in 1992 that sparked the origin of Gift of the Givers?
Hi, Bruce, and to all the viewers. I was on a trip to Istanbul in Turkey. I met a spiritual teacher. I met him the year before, in August 91, but went back in August 92. It was a Thursday night, 10 p.m., 6th of August, 1992. There was a spiritual session, a zikr. A zikr is a chanting of God's names in Arabic. And after the program, the Sufi master looks me in the eye and he looks heavenward at the same time. And then in fluent Turkish, and I don't understand a word of Turkish, but in fluent Turkish, he told me, my son, I am not asking you. I'm instructing you to form an organization. The name in Arabic will be Waqful Waqifin. Translated, it means Gift of the Givers. You will serve all people of all races, of all religions, of all colors, of all classes, of all cultures, of any political affiliation, and of any geographical location. But you will serve them unconditionally. You will expect nothing in return, not even a thank you. In fact, in what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, expect to get a kick up your back. If you don't get a kick up your back, regard that as a bonus. Serve people with love, kindness, compassion, and mercy. And remember, the dignity of man is foremost. So if someone is down in the ground, don't push them down further. Hold them, elevate them, lift them. Wipe the tear of a grieving child. Caress the head of an orphan. Say words of good counsel to a widow. These things are free. They don't cost anything. Clothe the naked, feed the hungry, and provide water to the thirsty. And in everything that you do, be the best at what you do. Not because of ego, but because you're dealing with human life, human dignity, and human emotion. He went on to say, this is an instruction for you for the rest of your life. And then he said, the most important thing to remember is this, that whatever you do is done through you and not by you. This is a spiritual instruction. I told you, he spoke in fluent Turkish. I don't understand a word of Turkish. I understood every single word that he said. And I asked him, how is this possible? He said, my son, when the hearts connect and the souls connect, the words become understandable. I told him, you gave me this instruction to form the organization. What am I supposed to do? What aspect of a social responsibility do I have to follow? Is it blankets? Is it food? Is it water? Is it counseling? What is it? He told me one line, you will know. And for 28 years, I do know what to do, when to do, and how to do.
Why you? What is it about you that made you receptive to that instruction at that moment in your life? I mean, for the vast majority of us would say, well, okay, we'll do what we can. We'll find a charity, we'll give some money, we'll go on a nice holiday and have an ice cream. What made you exceptional in that moment and receptive to the message that enabled you to actually begin the process?
Well, I was there the year before, and I saw the discipline. And I saw people of all religions there. And it's a very important year, because 91 was post-Gulf War. And Gulf War had polarized civilizations. It had polarized religions and communities. And it was the perception that the East was against the West, and the Christians and Jews on one side and the Muslims on the other side. And coming from an apartheid past doesn't help. And when you go to a place like that, and you suddenly see people, Jewish origin, Christian origin, people who say we don't believe, people who say we're communists, people who say we don't believe in God, and everybody in the same place, and all getting along in a very harmonious, respectable manner. I actually thought I was in the wrong place, you know, to see that happening. And when I realized the discipline and the respect, I said, there's something about this. So the people who took me around said, look, this place is a place of discipline. And before I went back, I realized that if the teacher says something, it's not something you play with.
So you come back to South Africa. It's 1992. South Africa is teetering on the brink of civil war. We are very, very close to make or break. The talks at Codesa are on and off and on and off. Chris Hani's been assassinated. It's a really, really, really difficult time. There's no way of guaranteeing that the 1994 elections are happening. You then start off at your home in Pietermaritzburg, in the back bedroom. What are the first projects that you do? How do you sort of make it known that you're available for service? Do you put a flag up outside? How does that work?
Well, I walked out of the place, and immediately the inspiration came to respond to the civil war in Bosnia. Now that again is something not normal. You don't form an organization and start with a war zone. You start with something simple. But it came to me that I have to get into the war zone. And it makes sense now, because 90% of what I know today, I learned in the first project. That's the first point. The second thing is, it outlined who we're going to be. We're going to be disaster response. Disaster response and management was our key project. Everything else was secondary. When he said you will know what to do, I then knew the gift of the givers is going to specialize in disasters. But we will add some other layers on the outside when there's no disasters. And that has happened over the last 28 years. We've got 21 different types of projects. We can talk about that later if you want. But when we got home, we announced, and look, I had done projects before that. I was involved in helping Mozambique in 1990 when Saddam invaded Kuwait. The projects in Mozambique fell. There was drought, there was malaria, a need was required in hospital, and I set up a project and we helped. In 91, we got involved in assisting victims of the Gulf War. And in 91, a major project, which I worked with the SA Navy, was to take aid to the cyclone in Bangladesh. And so there was already experience in Mozambique, in Iraq, and in Bangladesh, all international, you know. And then actually when I met the teacher, the words he used is, I see in your soul someone who likes to help people. And that was in 91. And in 92, the instruction came to do this.
Did it help that Bosnia was persecution of Muslims? I mean, as somebody who has grown up in the Islamic faith, as somebody who lived in a Muslim community, in order to get started, Did it help that you were going into Bosnia where Muslims were being persecuted as a startup, as to raise initial funding?
I don't think it, well, today's initial funding wasn't an issue because initially most of the donors were Muslim. And as part of the religion, you have been obligated to give a certain percent of your charity, of your income, after expenses as charity. So that was not a problem. The cause had to be good, the system had to be good, the marketing had to be good, and the results had to be good. So if you do that, there's no issue about people giving you money. That was not a problem, all right? I don't think it really mattered which country it was. What mattered was my mindset changed, because the Gulf had polarized me as it had polarized everybody else. Apartheid polarized me as it had polarized everybody else. We lost our property, we were evicted from our homes, we had to move to an area where the business was not good. All those things affected our lives, and we were restricted in so many ways. But when the teacher said, and I physically saw it, it was not words, I saw it in action. I saw people of all religions, of all colors, of all nationalities, sitting in harmoniously with each other. And I said, if after the Gulf War this is possible, surely it's possible anywhere else in the world. And immediately it left my mind, don't view people as white or Christian or Jew or black or Hindu. View people as people. And the teacher said, clearly he said, my son, no matter what the external paraphernalia, no matter what the rank, be an imam, a sheikh, a rabbi, a pandit, or a priest. But if he preaches violence and terrorism, he's not a man of God, don't follow him. And if anyone, excluding all those paraphernalia, it doesn't matter, he doesn't have those titles, but he's a person that preaches love, kindness, compassion, and understanding, that is the man of God, follow him. He went on to say that mankind is one single nation. The God of all mankind is one. We just call him by different names. So there's no reason to have conflict. And there's no reason to put people into different boxes. The moment you remove the boxes and see people as people, your mind opens up and it's much easier to work with people as it has been for us in the last 29 years.
Do you agree with Hans Rosling? Hans Rosling is the man who wrote the book Factfulness. He was a medical doctor also, like you, his training. He spent a lot of time across Africa, and he used analytical powers, basic deduction, to solve problems where people were treating diseases. For example, he would go and find data and statistics to try and find the origin of the disease rather than just treat the symptom. But Hans Rosling is very firmly of the belief in his book Factfulness that the world is getting better and better and better. Not everywhere and not to the same degree, but on average, things are getting better all the time. I wish he hadn't died before COVID, because I would have loved to have known what he would have thought about the disruption of COVID. But broadly speaking, was Hans Rosling right in your experience?
Yes, he was right? Because for things to get better, they have to get worse first. You get to the bottom of the pot and you can't go any further. You get to the bottom of the hole, but it's not endless. It has to stop somewhere. That is spiritual law, that you empty yourself up first before you can fill yourself. That is spiritual law. So the world itself, to me, COVID has come as a cleanser. COVID has come as a purifier. COVID has come, I know it's confusing, COVID has come to teach people, because let's look at COVID. People in the rural areas, what's different? They're still hungry. They still don't have water. They still don't have access to medical support. They still have kids walking barefoot. Their kids still go to dumps. They don't have any progress. They don't have any jobs. They die from TB or HIV, so they just die from COVID. What's the difference? But COVID for the middle class and upper class is an awakening. It has changed the economy. It has taught people who thought they knew everything in the world, who thought they were Superman and could do anything. They finally realized that all the machines, all the technology, all the learning, and all the knowledge in the world couldn't fight a nanovirus. The total destruction of millions of deaths in the world and the millions of infections in the world, the amount of virus that caused that is less than a teaspoon. And man suddenly came to the realization there's something more in this world. But more than that, man realized, you know what? I've always been about myself. I've always been pursuing my own interests. And if I'm finding this difficulty, what about the poor? It may not be with everybody, but it has been with a large amount of people. Corporates, for the first time, not all of them, again, they may get upset, but that's the reality. Normally, when the corporates give you for CSI, They're there just to take the register. Do I get my BE points? Do I fill this? Do I fill that? It's about that. It's not about the human aspect of it. But now they said, look, and the many corporates came, it's not about BE points anymore. It's about saving our country and saving our people, because we've been through that difficulty and we now know what hardship and difficulty is all about. When you say hunger and difficulty in COVID, you're not referring to people in rural areas. You're talking about middle-class people also. You're talking about the medical profession also. You're talking about people who are in private schools and top earners. People lost everything overnight. Have you noticed, I haven't noticed it in all these years, that private schools have been aggressive in advertising to say we have places. I got a shock to see the size of the billboards. And all the schools I've spoken to parents, they're saying the numbers have dropped. People have lost money. They can't go to school. So it has affected everybody equally. And it is time for awakening and say, you know what, let's relook at life and prioritize what's important in life.
It's so interesting as the big dislocation that it revealed. I mean, people who drive their kids to private school in fancy 4x4s and live in heavily bonded houses, suddenly when the income stops, their lifestyle stops, because the world has moved to a point where the vast majority of us are living on credit and borrowed time. And it doesn't take much to actually destabilize the entire system and do it quite vigorously at all layers of society.
Bruce, for how many years has the Reserve Bank been telling us, South Africans don't save. They say our debt levels are one of the worst in the world. But what I don't understand, and I'm a very blunt guy, so people have to take it like it is. They go to Gibbs, they go to the best schools of business, they get MBAs, but nobody tells them to prepare for a rainy day. How's that possible? You go to the bank, and the bank tells you from your salary, I can give you a house, 20,000 Rand a month bond. You can pay 20,000 Rand, I can give you that much. They go and buy a car, they say, okay, from your salary, take out the house and other things, you can pay 10,000 Rand a month. And the guys go and max the amount of the payment. They don't say, okay, let's take a house where we can pay 15,000 Rand and leave 5,000 Rand in case something goes wrong. The car, don't buy for 10,000 Rand, let's buy for 7,000 Rand in case there's an accident and I need a vehicle, or I need to repair it, or the engine blew up, I can't go to work anymore. Nobody thinks like that. And what was even more frightening is companies that are 40 years or long in the business can't survive 40 days of a lockdown. What is that telling you? The business schools need to relook at what they're teaching and how they prepare. It's not about making money only. It's about being ready for when the disaster comes, what happened right now. A virus destroyed the entire economic system in the world.
Were you always blunt? Have you found that you've become increasingly impatient with people over the years? As you've heard, I'm sure, every single excuse in the book, every single reason as to why people can't support those in need. Did you start off all being nice and compromising and have become blunt over the years because actually you haven't got time to waste with people who are going to waste your time?
You got it right. I was a very soft guy when I was small. As I grew up, I don't get angry in a hurry, and it's very difficult to make me angry. I also don't get impatient with people, but I get impatient with systems. Because they always say, don't hate the individual, hate the action. Because a person may be a good person, but his actions are a disaster sometimes. He's a very nice person, but he's damn slow. Like right now, all the drivers will get upset with me, but all the guys are driving slow on the fast lane. Like there's no issue anymore. The trucks on the fast lane after COVID, everything has changed on the roads too. But in any case, it's about the action. And in my business, where you find people try to corrupt the system, they'll say, okay, you're busy involved with foreign currency transactions. I'll give you 10%. Can you send my money across? And that's when the floodgates, when my emotions go to the roof, because we have a system to preserve. It's many reasons. One, it's spiritual. It's an instruction from a Sufi master, which I can't let down. Secondly, it's a religion. It says all Muslims are bad, which we already call that all over the world in any case. So it's that kind of stuff. The religious law doesn't allow that. It's an indictment on the religion, yet it's an indictment on you and not on the religion, because you are doing something away from religion that's causing the problem. It's an indictment on your community, and it's an indictment on the NGO world. If the corporate world and the donors start losing interest in NGOs because of something that you've done, can you imagine the suffering of millions of people all around the world, and you are responsible for that action. So the only way to solve the problem was to say it like it is, and said, if you don't like it, take your money and go, finish. That's the issue. And I found people respect it more. They know where they stand. They don't come waste our time. And in COVID-19, for the first time, corporates were not like tortoises. They realized you can't ask something in February and come back to you in July, August. They came back to you within 48 hours, and some of them, one company, in 10 minutes, put 10 million rand into our account. Now, that's a huge achievement because it meant they were touched by the spiritual and humanitarian aspect of what was going on, and not by the corporate marketing ticking register point of view.
Now, before we came on, lots of people sent questions, and one of them was, where do you get most of your funding from? I think you seem to have the sort of limitless supply of money. Wherever there's a crisis, you turn up and you solve problems. That requires big bundles of cash. Where does it come from?
That's the best part. The teacher said, I'll never look for money. And the money comes from South Africans. And believe it, most of the money came from ordinary South Africans, not from corporates. It came from ordinary South Africans. Corporates is a new thing. It's more from the time of the National Fire. Because again, there's this perception, we're a Muslim organization, we get involved in war zones, it's a fundamentalist thing, we got involved with terrorists, we negotiate for hostages, and terrorists are our friends, and that's why we get hostages out. There's all that kind of thinking. And the media, of course, likes stories of international intervention rather than local. The local is not sensationalist, it doesn't doesn't make news kind of thing. All that has changed, obviously, over the last 4 years. So the initial support, yes, came from the Muslim community. And then Somalia was an eye-opener. When a school in Orange Farm, where the children don't have a lunch, they don't have a lunchbox, they don't have a knapsack, they don't have shoes, they don't have socks, they don't have a jersey. When that school collected 40,000 rand in Orange Farm to give to people in suffering in Somalia where kids are dying, it told me, and it answers the question that Hans raised, that there's more goodness in the world. That was limitless goodness from a community that couldn't look after itself, decided to spend on people in other parts of the world. I was pleasantly surprised when all the new black entrepreneurs, and I'm saying blacks deliberately, because they come from a past where there was no means, and they came from Soweto, what expensive 4x4s and BMWs and Mercedes, and brought foodstuff for Somalia. And during the time of xenophobia, all the guys with expensive 10,000 rand suits and 2-door coupes, white guys, came to the Melrose Arch, carrying maize meal in their hands and bringing stuff for the xenophobia. That told me that with all our difficulty and all our challenges, yes, there's many good people. In fact, most people in our country and in the world are good, who want to see good. Yes, they want to see themselves ascend up the material ladder. That's fine, they can do that. No problem with that, no harm, no crime doing that. But in the process, if they remember there's somebody lower down that needs your assistance, they came and they stood by it. And Hans's words couldn't be better than in COVID. How many companies collapsed? How many people lost their jobs? How much people have taken money and stuff it in the account and saying, let's not give it. A man comes to our office and says, I gave you 2,500 rand last year. I haven't earned 1 cent in 3 months. My business is closed. But I went to my savings and I'm giving you 10,000, 4 times the amount of last year, because I'm feeling it. If I'm feeling it, what's happening to other people around me? They must be really, really desperate. I'm taking this out and I'm giving this to you. I say Hans is right again, because it was the biggest collection in our history. When everybody said the economy is going to collapse, I said we'll be the busiest. We'll see, because people come, I said at the beginning, you have the right program, right implementation, right ethics, right project, and do it effectively, people will come to you. It was the biggest collection in our history. And more than that, suddenly companies from America, from the UK, and from Europe started looking at us. Agencies started looking at us. Some money came, but the dialogue has commenced to do something even bigger in the future.
What keeps you motivated? I mean, for many people, they would be completely demoralized by the privation that they see. They would get quite depressed about it. They might even become depressed themselves as a result of just seeing constantly, wherever you go, there's an old joke that says, the Queen of England thinks that Britain smells of fresh paint because wherever she goes, the place has just been painted. Wherever you go is just misery and destruction and destitution and sadness and sorrow. I mean, you don't go to comedy clubs. You don't go to those kind of places to get a lift. What keeps you going when everything around you is always so tough?
It's simple. First of all, I need to answer, I'm a disaster tourist. I don't do tourism in normal times. I see countries in the worst possible situation. That's the first thing. The second thing, it's a spiritual thing. Spiritual strengthens your mind. Thirdly, everybody practices social distancing. I practice emotional distancing. I don't attach myself to any situation. And I always tell my teams, don't say that Joel and Zweli and Ismail and Rekha are all in such difficult trouble all over the world. Don't say that. Don't personalize the issue to an individual. Say people in this area are affected. Make it global. Don't attach yourself to that. I always tell my teams that. So that's emotional distancing is important. What gets me motivated? The fact that I'm not on the other side. When I see my children, I see my family, and I see we're not like what it is on the other side. And I've seen horrors, more than enough horrors. And the thankfulness that we're not on the other side is something that drives me 24/7, 365 days a year. Because you can't say, imagine if you're on the other side and people on the good side said, oh, you know what, we got donor fatigue, we are depressed, we're emotional. In the meantime, what happens to you? Nobody's going to respond to you. What happens to your child? What happens to the mother who doesn't have breast milk to feed a child? What happens to the child that cries and cries and cries without hunger and suddenly just goes silent and can't cry anymore and just dies? And if you can do, and the problem is, I've got spiritual instruction to help, and I know I can do it. I can't sit back and say I'm tired. There's no place for tiredness, because you need to do it because you've been given the skill and the gift to do it. And that's something that drives you. And while the energy is in the body and while there's health, we will do that, because with that, we don't give. We actually receive when we give. The greatest joy is when you see those eyes, and you see the eyes of thankfulness. You don't need a word. And that's something that will keep driving you over and over again. It's quite easy, actually.
What happens when it's government failure? What happens when you've got a government in power, be it at a municipal level, at a provincial level, at a national level, and you go into a country, or here at home, which you've done many times, is to use Makhanda as an example, the sheer ineptitude of elected officials, the corruption of elected officials, the complete and utter failure of citizens who keep voting the same people into power time and time again. Yet you step in, and in Makhanda, for example, because it's a great recent example, within a couple of days, water was then flowing to Khini once again in Makhanda. And you got it done really, really quickly, really, really efficiently, not using an extraordinary amount of money in order to achieve the delivery of a basic government service. Now, that upsets me as a human being enormously. You simply go, it's part of your daily business.
The problem with that, Bruce, is everybody says it's government responsibility. We know that. It's government's responsibility. But over the years, a lot of skill and talent has left those municipalities and the departments. People who had the skill, who put up the systems, have left. And you have people there who come in simply because they've been voted in by somebody. The system needs to change. Government needs to run as a corporate. Yes, the guys come to power, you know what? But if they don't have the skill, they need to employ somebody who knows what they're doing. It costs more money in the long run, but no matter how much money it costs, the job doesn't get done. But in the meantime, while you're haggling, we have to look at the tender. The problem is government needs a course on disaster management. And I've mentioned this as an example many times before. When you tell them there's a drought in an area and there's no water, what's the common answer they give you? They tell you we're building a dam. So I ask them, is the dam going to be ready this afternoon? And will people be drinking water this evening? You must be building a dam very quickly, because the crisis is now. They can't wait for your dam. You need to understand emergency, urgency, and disaster. Those are three big words that you guys just don't understand. You don't get it right. Because when person is in crisis, they're hungry not 10 months from now, they're hungry right now. When they got COVID, they got it now. When they got thirst, they got it now. And while you're haggling and you say, no, it's provincial government's responsibility, they say, no, it's municipality's responsibility, no, it's that department, it's the chief director, it's somebody else. And day after day, what's happening? Citizens are suffering. And we decided, you know what? We're not going to wait for the circus. We're just going to go in and do it because we know how to help people. We only tell you one thing, stay out of our way. Just stay out of our way, because otherwise we will embarrass you, you know? And strangely enough, nobody comes in our way. Everybody's very cooperative. And the other good thing is, they tell you quietly, you know, we don't know how to do this. We just don't know how to do this. Thank you very much for helping us. We lost. Can you help us? When the Naisna fire came, the mayor came and the disaster management came and said, be honest, we don't know what to do. Can you help us? That's fine. I don't have an issue with that.
Well, I mean, that sort of level of extreme disaster is one thing. And I get that your role there is irreplaceable because those are once-off events or once in a 10 or 20-year events. But when it comes to the failure of basic services, the failure of just people not doing their jobs, that's infuriating. Surely that must annoy even you, who is hard to annoy.
Well, Bruce, it's something I expect. You know, it's something that's not unusual to me. You know, I see that happening all the time. And it has to be with the rot that has set in over the last few years. The systems are working very well in the beginning, you know, when powers change. But over the years, when you have examples of bad leadership, when corruption is allowed to fester, when the police services, you know, there's corruption within the police services, people take that as quite normal. That to be lax, not to have service delivery, to steal is all fine because there are no consequences. And as long as there's no consequences, we keep saying, vote for somebody else. But where's the alternative? People find that they can't find the alternative. And they say, you know what? Rather we live with the devil we know. And that's the issue. Political parties need to jack themselves up. They need to put the systems in. Even now, you keep finding that the discussion to the commentators and analysts that all the other political parties with ANC imploding still, you know, haven't jacked their own game up. And people are willing to change. It's not like black people are all going to say, let's go for ANC. They are the ones questioning government the most and go to the Eastern Cape. And what they're saying? They're saying our movement has lost spirituality. Our movement has lost direction. Our movement has lost leadership. We don't want this. Our movement has lost God. They don't know where God is. That's why this country is suffering. And that's a general sentiment you'll get all over. People are willing to change, but they say, give us somebody we can follow. And somebody we can, you know, who can direct the way. So it's not that people are stuck in a rut and keep voting the same time over and over again. We need to have more robust politics. We have to have parties who have better systems and fairness within their own parties to make sure that they can deliver and say, yes, we can do what the ANC does, but even better, and be ethical, and be honest, and we can deliver, and we can put water, and these are our plans. But who comes up with that? Nobody.
I've seen suggestions that Gift of the Givers should register as a political party and President Sooliman should run the country.
Yes, that's been running for crazy since the time of COVID, but I'm not really interested in running. I was involved in politics. In 1994, you know, they put me the head of the African Muslim Party. I was out of the country when I came back. They told me you're the leader of the party. I said, which party? And who elected me? They said, no, it was common consensus that you should run the party. But I said, I'm not interested in politics. They said, no, you have to stand now. We already put your name there and it has to go forward and a whole lot of sad stories. And secretly, I said, I hope we don't get a single seat. Unfortunately, that happened. The spiritual teacher said, my son, never work for government, never work in government, always work with government. And that's what I've been doing for 28 years. I'm not interested in political party. I'm not interested in being head of state, because then we'll be spending a lot of time with red tape and paperwork and discussions, and the speed with which I move, I won't be able to do. I'll be all caught up with hundreds of people around me wasting my time. And you know, Aziz Fahad once offered me, he said, I'd like you to be an ambassador. I want to offer you a post as an ambassador. So I said, Aziz, that means I work for government. That means I work for you. It means I take instructions from you. If I work outside government, it means I don't work for government. It means you take instructions from me. Which is the better option? He said, you're right.
I saw that somebody wants to nominate you, a group of people wants to nominate you for a Nobel Peace Prize. And many people would say, hold on a second, but that would be an incredible accolade for the work so far and the work still to come. Yet you discourage people from acknowledging you in that way. Why?
I'm not against awards. I'm not against acknowledgement. It's people's way of showing love. It's insulting them, you know. But the Nobel Prize in the COVID-19 circumstances is something I could not accept for people to nominate me. Because what made my work any different from all those guys in the front line who sat with the virus face to face every single day with 30 or 40 patients? What makes them any different from me? And what makes them different in anywhere else in the world? You know, so it was a collective effort, and everybody, if anybody should get the Nobel, it should be the world citizens, the whole world, for standing up together for COVID-19 together. You know, they deserve it. It can't be a competition now and people motivate and say it's better than somebody else. Nobody's better than somebody else. This virus affected everybody equally. I take university doctorates, I take presidential awards. People come to you, but I don't say, okay, it has to be WITS and UCT and UKZN, then I'll take the doctorate. And if it's universities that are not so well known or the training colleges, I won't take the doctorate. You can't do that. That's ego. That's insulting people who are showing love, wants to recognize you because they feel deeply that they appreciate what you do. And then you take appreciation and stab it in the hand and say, look, sorry, I don't want you. That's not a good thing to do. So I could take an award from anyone, but for Nobel during COVID-19 was just totally out of character to have motivation and people mobilizing and say, let's push him, let's push him. I don't want it because the whole world, especially the healthcare workers, and not only healthcare workers, it's teachers, it's police people, it's military. They stood in the front line. More teachers than healthcare workers have died in South Africa during COVID-19. You know, so all of them deserve that respect and that recognition.
What is your trigger point? What is the moment you decide to get involved? Haiti was easy. Earthquake devastation needs immediate and quick response. How big does a crisis need to be? How to trigger your response? Because you're generally there before the aftershocks settle. You do move incredibly quickly. You say you don't have a tolerance for red tape and people wasting your time. So how do you make those calls?
It's simple. The rule is simple. The head of state must make an announcement internationally that he wants world support. Now let's take a classical example like Mozambique. Mozambique has hit by many cyclones, but since 2000, they don't make calls for international support anymore, and except Cyclone Idai. And you take India, since the tsunami, the time of the tsunami, India doesn't call for international aid. It's the first time now, today, in this last month, with COVID-19, that they've asked for aid. And Mozambique was upset, and it was nobody's fault what happened. When the South African pilots went in to save people when the Zambezi River widened itself by several kilometers, the world image was on that lady that was born in the tree, and the South African pilots saving the water. But sort of subliminally or unconsciously, the media created the impression that the Mozambique government hadn't done anything for its people. It was South African pilots and South African support, disaster people that saved the country, which wasn't true. So since that time, Mozambique doesn't ask for assistance. Not only for that reason, it's also because they preparing themselves. It's important if countries say, look, we don't want assistance, we can manage ourselves. That's very good disaster preparedness. It's excellent. So, so until a country says, we can't manage, we need help, we won't go in. And then we won't go in. We'll first see who are the trading partners, who are the neighbors, what are they doing? Because Africa is very far down south. And we have limited resources on our continent. If we're going to use it everywhere else, what happens to your own people when you get hit? And that's why when the explosion took place in Lebanon, when everybody got ready to go, and I said, we're not going. And I said, why? I said, because you guys are needed in hospitals here. All the paramedics and all the doctors, how can we go to Lebanon when we are almost, in a huge crisis in COVID-19 in our own country, and we got a shortage of healthcare workers? We're not going, but we're going to do it remotely. We will send stuff across. We'll buy things on the other side. We'll empower them to help themselves, like what we're doing in India right now. We're not sending teams across. Yes, we've got fantastic teams. But I said, if we go there and we get stuck, or you get sick there, and the third wave hits us, you guys are going to come back exhausted after the first and second wave. It's illogical to go and then put you into the heart of the third wave. And by the way, we're already in the third wave. We're already in the third wave. It's growing, and the figures are not correct because a lot of people are not testing. So we need to be ready for the third wave. So it's then that we said first time, Lebanon last year, and in the atmosphere that we're not sending teams. So when the head of state calls and say, okay, this earthquake is massive, the tsunami was big, earthquake in Haiti was big, the famine in Somalia was big, COVID is big in the country, it's easy to make that decision, where to go and where not to go. There's lots of small ones, 20 people affected, 50 people affected, lots of damage, but no major loss of life relatively. We will not go into those kind of situations.
You described earlier, you said you described Gift of the Givers as my business. And I think that's a really interesting mindset in terms of the way in which you run Gift of the Givers. Just explain to me the choice of that word, those words, my business, when you are a charitable organization, when you are a giving organization. A business is a fundamentally different thing. Is it just because of the way you run it?
Yes, it's following up principles of business. Like if government follows principles of business, you reduce expenses and you increase income. And from the income that you increase, every 1 rand must make 4 rand. That's how because in COVID time, there's only 2 ways to survive. Either you cut your costs and people shut all the offices down, stop doing rentals, stop paying rental to big companies, cut their staff down, gave them short time to survive. That was a critical decision which they were forced to do. Many survived as much as they could, but beyond that, they couldn't go. And then, of course, whatever savings they had benefited them. And you couldn't do much business in that time because there's nobody to buy from you. And companies who had invested just a few months before that in big businesses or in properties or in vehicles suddenly found those things are not generating income. So in the same way in disaster, because we are disaster specialists, we're going to protect our own selves from our own disaster. And that is to build reserves, to make sure you have streams of funding, to have sure you have your own results, your own income generation, and continuous marketing and cut your costs. And we do that all the time. How we can become more efficient, how we can attract more attention, how we can get more funding, how we can help more people. Because in our business, it's about saving people. And we follow laws of corporate world. It has to be profit generating without making profits. When I say profit generating, I don't think we don't sell things to make money because we're not supposed to do that. No, we give things for free. But do we sell the idea to companies? And I always tell my staff, there's no need to say anything. And I use the word just shut up and deliver on the ground. People, your words on the ground, your action on the ground will talk better than your words. And everybody has come to us, they said, we don't need an explanation. We've seen it. Can we talk? To the point that after NASDA, I had to finally appoint a corporate manager who talks to government and talks to corporates, because now they're seriously interested. We are in a fortunate position of not waiting for an appointment from a corporate. We're in a position to tell the corporate when we can talk to you.
Have you ever gone on spec on a gig? I call it a gig, but I mean on to a disaster where there's just no money. You don't have the money. You're operating on credit, or you're operating very close to ground zero in terms of your finances. Or is there always a very comfortable cushion?
I never do something on credit. You can't do something on credit. You only do according to the money you have in your account. What I do, because we build up reserves, I don't wait for money to come in. It becomes the same problem like a disaster, like UCT fire, for example. If I tell the students, you know what, you guys are hungry, but just wait for us a little while. We're going to set up the collection, and in 4 days' time, we're going to feed you. In the meantime, do what you can for the next 4 days. It doesn't work like that. The National fire, the moment it happened, my teams asked, what do we do? I said, I'm releasing 20 million to respond to the fire. And that's the budget we're putting up, and we just have to fill it up. And it came immediately. The support came, and that's the first time corporates saw our local capability. Well, not local capability. They could see what we do internationally applied locally. And they could see our skill and our speed and how we bypass red tape and how we make things happen. And from then onwards, it was day zero in Cape Town. It was the fodder and the hunger in Sutherland, the farmers, the animals dying in Sutherland. Then came Makanda, the big one for the drought in the Eastern Cape. And then came COVID in 2020. And every of those projects have drawn more and more corporate attention locally. But as I said now, there's interest from international companies wanting to deal with us. And some of them have given us during the time of COVID.
Something that you must be thinking about is succession. You've been doing this for nearly 30 years. You'll probably continue doing it for years to come. How do you identify a successor, somebody with a level of calling that you have that is unique, and remarkable, which keeps you motivated? Because you employ a CEO of Gift of the Givers, they're in a job. How do you identify a successor? How do you work out how this carries on 50 years, 100 years from now? Because there's always going to be need for emergency assistance.
Again, in our case, because we belong to a spiritual order, it's a spiritual instruction. And the person who takes over from me has to be a disciple of the spiritual teacher, like I am, and like my family is. So in 2016, I was in Turkey again. I've been there 25 times. And just before that, my son tells my wife he likes to join me. So I told my wife, ask him if he's feeling well. You know, is there something wrong with him that he wants to join me? Has he not seen how this thing has destroyed our family? I know there's no time, there's no family time, there's no time for anything. This thing has overrun my life 24/7, 365 days a year. And she spoke to him. He says, no, he wants to do it. So I go to the spiritual teacher. I tell him, you know what? I know you've given me permission to do what I need to do. I know I've been told I will know what to do. In spite of that, in the respect of the spiritual order, I ask you, my son wants to join. And he says, what took him so long? And is a natural successor in terms of the spiritual connection. After that, whoever comes after that as part of the spiritual connection, that person will take off. It may be family, it may not be family. But in this case, because it's a small representation, and of course, he's been with me at the spiritual order. He's traveled with me on missions. All my teams know him. He's brought a lot of experience from the commerce world, you know, involved in a commerce company. He's come in with a lot of IT skills, things that I don't have. And he's brought a lot of change in terms of social media, IT, human personnel. He dealt with, you know, staff issues and a lot of stuff. And at the same time, whilst doing that, I made all my project managers independent. I've got independent medical team heads, independent search and rescue team heads, the corporate managers, you know, and all managers and the finance people who work in the different systems. So in essence, if I drop that now, 90% of what I do can be done without me. My specialty is, of course, the media just want to aggregate around me. It's still, they're not used to going around other people yet, although we put many more people to do the interviews. So that's one problem. The second thing is I design the projects, but it's not something others can't do. But years of following me, they'll be able to do how I do it. And again, it's not something of my own skill. It's as a teacher said, you will know. And when that spiritual thing passes on, others after me will know what to do. But by and large, from a non-spiritual point of view, if people say from a human point of view, from a rational point of view, 90% of what I do is already filtered through to all the systems. And everybody can do what I do. All they need is somebody to say, okay, do we respond to this disaster? Yes or no, which I normally do. The last 3 or 4 missions pre-COVID, I send them, I normally lead the teams. That time I decided not to lead the teams. I stayed back. I said, you guys go now. And I don't want to hear anything. Don't tell me you got a problem. Don't tell me you don't know how to figure it out. I don't want to know. I'm dead. I can't hear. You fixed it yourself. And the guys did remarkably well. And I said, you know what? They're ready to do this thing without me.
Personal sacrifice. I mean, the cost to Imitiaz Sooliman, to the Sooliman family, you described it as this thing destroyed my life. And I think it's a flippant remark because it's taking your life in a different direction, but yes, it has come at enormous personal cost, clearly.
Yes, it has affected my children psychologically. There's one who's under treatment for 5 years now, It has affected my other children. When I was in Bosnia, they should see the pictures on the screen and get terrified. Yeah, is your father coming back alive back home? I have no family time for them. Because the problem was I was developing an organization that took 24/7. You had to fight in the world to get known. You come from an apartheid past. You're an Indian. You're a Muslim. You're regarded as a terrorist. You have a limited donor base. You have to push all that to get the job done. So all those things required. I used to travel 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, town to town, speaking about what I'm doing, especially when it came to Muslim causes. Iraq is in trouble, the other parts of the world are in trouble, and speak about the Muslim causes. And I used to go, even Ramadan, at fast breaking time, I'm in one mosque, an hour and a half later, I'm in another mosque, and after the prayer, I'm in the third mosque, and the morning prayer, I'm in another mosque, kind of stuff. So I traveled through the country alone at night, working long hours and getting to establish the organization. And in the process, the family got neglected, children got neglected, everybody got neglected. But the good thing is, because they traveled with me to the spiritual teacher, they understood what I was doing. Yes, my only regret is, if I go to turn the clock back, I would have tried to balance my life. But a spiritual teacher told me that. He told me, my son, before you start, remember, 1/3 for the family, 1/3 for your work, and 1/3 for yourself. And every time I went back as a teacher, this formula doesn't work. 4/3 goes away for the work. There's no time and space for anything else. And he just smiled. And he said, it was sort of an acknowledgement that I'm a kind of guy that's driven, that you can't hold back. And in the process, a lot of things suffer. But it's calmed down a lot. Yes, I've managed to delegate. The only problem with delegation is when you have more managers, each of them find more work for you. So they all come up with 10 times more work than when you are alone. And it's, again, requires a lot of time, but still I've tried to slow down in terms of making more of that family time available now.
Imitiaz Sooliman, thank you very much indeed for sharing your story with us today. And Bonso, back to you.
Thank you, Bruce and Imitiaz. It's heartwarming to hear, while he often witnesses the worst of the world, Dr. Sooliman has not lost hope in humanity, because clearly goodness seems to prevail in the worst of circumstances. And having dealt with disasters across the world, Dr. Sooliman knows better than anyone that we should always plan and save for a rainy day, to always be ready for the next crisis. Given that, a skilled and trusted financial advisor can be invaluable during these uncertain times. They can provide objective insights and help you consider alternative scenarios so that you can make considered, rational decisions on your wealth and insurance portfolios. If you have an advisor, I encourage you to engage with them. And if you don't, please get in touch with us. We welcome your feedback, so feel free to communicate with us, and be sure to register for our next exciting speaker in the Think Big series.